We had some false alarms. I mean, the word came out and went down the chain of command right before Christmas. We're getting deployed, and that upset a lot of families. It's like, I can't believe the Army's going to send you before Christmas. It's like, hey, you know, whatever they need you, you got to go.
So Christmas came, and then New Year's, and everything was going fine. And I remember I was starting to think, well, yeah, we might be getting out of the woods here. And then we had drill on I believe it was the 10th and 11th, possibly 11th and 12th, can't remember exactly. But at that point in time, I called up the reserve unit the night before and said, hey, I might be a little bit late tomorrow getting here. I got a couple things to, finish up around the house. I might be in there about 9, and the guy's like, no, you need to be here early in the morning. We've just been activated. So I was like, oh. So I remember I was driving, and I'm driving through, 5 o'clock traffic, and I kind of have this knot in my stomach, I'm thinking. But, and I'm trying to make, light of this bad situation. I'm thinking, well, I finally got my wish I wanted 10 years ago, and that's just kind of the attitude I took.
Really had no idea what we were getting into. I'd never been deployed before, and I was just trying to make sure she had access to my, my finances, my checking account, and my credit cards, and all that kind of stuff. And trying to think about a will too. That's something I never thought about until that point. And I found out that making a will and who gets custody of your kids is not really as cut and dried as you might think it is. And what happens if both parents are gone? Then who gets them? And then it goes from there.
We had to also go through a lot of the things we'd been putting off, talking about the will, talking about what to do if he did die, what would happen, who would inform me of it, about the benefits of the dependents. That was something I didn't want to discuss. But he said we have to discuss it. If we've put it off enough, we have to discuss it now.
As a teacher, it was kind of difficult because here it is Friday, and I got to find someone to cover my class for the next month, or possibly longer. So I remember I went up and talked to the commander. I said, listen, here's what I do. Here's the problem I have. Can you give me a couple days? And so he goes, yeah, I'll work with you. The principal I was working for, Jerry Edens, really helped me out a lot. What he said was, he goes, don't worry about anything here. We got it covered.
We were all there. We went up that weekend and got a hotel room, and then we were at the unit with him, my boy and me and all the kids, and it was midnight. We were still there at the unit waiting for him to finally go. And snowstorm, of course, snowstorm moved in, so it was pretty bad. Everything was in a hurry. All of a sudden, everybody was casual. Then all of a sudden, it was load, and so yeah, she was there 1 minute and gone the next.
Yeah. How'd you feel that first night?
It didn't really sink in. I don't think everybody was tired, and the kids were tired. And we went back to the hotel. I took them, went back to the hotel room, and everybody kind of talked about it and how long she was going to be gone and what they were thinking. And everybody slept pretty. They all slept, but we talked for an hour or so about what everybody was thinking about. And they were just concerned about well, she probably won't be over there a year, and she won't. But yeah, it didn't sink in right away. It was a few days after that when things started hitting home that she wasn't around.
We just sat downstairs in his parents' basement, just holding on to every minute that we had, and then we piled into the Jeep. It was his grandma, his grandfather, his mom, his dad, me, and in the very back. We were just all trying to cram into the same vehicle when we drove up to Bridgeport to say goodbye. And I wasn't the strongest person in the world. I just cried continuously, I remember my mom calling me on my cell phone on the way up and telling me that I needed to be strong. I needed to straighten up. I needed, his family doesn't need to see this. They don't need to see how upset you are. You need to, hold it together. And I just couldn't. I couldn't. I cried just continuously from that drive until he was on the bus and a little bit after that.
I think that was the hardest moment in my life, was the night he left. Because it was snowing, and they had a big ceremony up at the Reserve Center that day, and the governor came down and some of the senators, and everybody saw them off. But then later that night, at like midnight, is when they had to come back to leave. And it didn't strike me really bad until we got in the car to go to the Reserve Center, and I started crying. It was so emotional. I mean, you have every soldier there and every family with them, and everybody was going through the same thing. And I mean, you'd walk through there and you would see another family member you didn't even know, and would just start crying and hug each other, and it was just so emotional. It was so sad. Last thing I said to him was, just make sure you come home to us. And he said, I'll do the best I can. I'm not promising anything, but if there's any way I can control it all, I'll be home.
The last person I seen before I actually moved out was my mother. It was a terrible snowstorm that night. We thought the bus was going over the side of the hill when it pulled out of the parking lot. It was bad, but we couldn't wait. We had to go. And my mom was standing out there in the snowstorm waiting for me, watching me leave.
The kids and I drove home that night, and it was snowing really bad. And we were just crying. And one of the things, I don't know if he remembers this, he'll probably be embarrassed, but one of the things that he had done earlier was Tim had given him a lifesaver. We were at the Reserve Center, and he gave him a lifesaver. And we're driving home, and I mean, we're all just crying. And Ben said, can I have a plastic bag when I go home? And I said, for what? He goes, because I want to keep this lifesaver, because it's the last thing my dad ever gave me. And we kept that lifesaver for like 2 years. A year after Tim came home, I thought it was safe to throw it away, but it was very emotional. And we got home and we put on his Army t-shirts, and we all three slept in the same bed that night. And it was unbelievably hard.
To purchase DVDs of this program, go to wvpubcast.org and click on Outlook.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.